Welcome back to another episode of the How Good Is Your Team series. This time we'll be focusing on the new look NYXL. The plan is to recap their offseason and provide insight on how good I think they could be in Season 4 of the Overwatch League. If you're new to this series and you want to know more about it, make sure to check out the first episode on the Shock through the link in the description. Anyway, let's talk New York Excelsior. They had an offseason that was very fun to keep track of. It was filled with many changes that have completely altered the outlook and identity of this franchise. Pretty much every familiar face that New York fans cheered on for years are gone now. It was a pretty rough offseason emotionally, and understandably so. Let's take a look at the players they parted ways with. The pain all started when Haxel announced his retirement. On paper, it's a tough loss. Haxel is a one-of-a-kind player, and it's very difficult to find talent like him these days. But I feel that his style did not mesh all that well with New York. As good as Haxel is, he requires a lot of resources, and that's not exactly an easy thing to do when Jonak is also on your team. So honestly, it's not the end of the world, New York fans. Next on the player departure list is Nene, Hoppa, and Who Are You? To be honest, the only one of those guys I'm sad to see go is Nene. I had a lot of hopes that Nene would become a superstar hit scan one day, but between visa issues and not always getting properly utilized, Nene never really got to realize his true potential. He was such a promising talent in Season 2 and parts of Season 3. It's disappointing to see the two sides break up when they're capable of a lot more together. Hoppa and Who Are You though? Well, they were both very replaceable. Hoppa was one of the worst starters last year. He was lucky to not be a total burden on a good day, I feel like. Poor decision making and failure to protect his team made him a liability a lot of the time. He's just not that valuable in the current state of the game. A roll-lock greatly hinders his ability to contribute. For Who Are You, I feel that he simply just past his prime at this point. Early on in the season, he got a few chances to be a starter, but could never really deliver. Most characters that flex DPS have to play these days are out of his comfort zone. After playing Echo that time against Shanghai, he rarely saw the stage again. All he was doing was wasting a roster spot, so cutting ties with him was definitely the right thing to do. Then came some bigger news when it was announced that Mono was getting traded to the Fusion, probably the biggest loss of the offseason for the NYXL. It goes without saying that Mono is one of the most consistent main tank players the league has ever seen. He did so much for this New York team, and there were several times where he was quietly carrying. Sometimes he did not get the attention he deserved, despite consistently being a top 5 or better main tank in the league for 3 years straight. He was their leader that they depended on time and time again. But even so, a lot of the time he never got the resources. With the exception of GOATs, it was usually about Jonak or a DPS player. Mono took the backseat more often than not, and yet he still managed to be a top-tier player during the time he spent on the NYXL. To get so much out of somebody you barely put investment into is something you're going to miss for sure. Getting anywhere close to that level of production and value with somebody else is going to be insanely difficult. Mandu would be the next person to go. Not much to say here. Really not a big deal. He played for like a map or two, I want to say. They chose to never utilize this guy despite the team wanting to play more aggressively during Season 3. Animo was their starter. I suppose he just wasn't good enough. We'll find out if that's the case soon enough though, as Mandu seeks to prove the doubters wrong on the charge. Sabiobi, Libero, and Animo were the last to go. While Season 3 in particular saw all of these guys be less of a factor in game, you can't really deny what they've done for this franchise the last 3 years. Much like Mono, they've all been star players at one point or another. Each and every one of them had their fair share of brilliant moments. They're all going to be greatly missed for their past efforts and accomplishments, but sadly, the only one of these guys who was consistently fielded in 2020 was Animo. SBB's appearances were very sporadic at times, not to mention he was kind of just okay. Not bad, but not really a difference maker. The thing that the NYXL might miss though is of course his leadership, because he was a true captain, never afraid to speak his mind, and a very comforting presence overall. When it comes to Libero, I have no idea what happened. The NYXL simply did not like to play him, despite usually showing good results when they did. But I suppose it's not the end of the world that they didn't want to play him anyway. It just sucks to see a player of his caliber be let go of when there's so much more potential there. The only guy they might actually miss from the lineup standpoint is going to be Animo, as he played 99% of the time and was heavily counted on to do a lot more than people even realize. To try and keep so many resource-heavy players under wraps is no easy task, and yet he still managed to be a pretty good main support despite him having a down year. The potential blessing of replacing him would of course be getting someone a bit less passive, but those are all of the NYXL player losses. Sometimes you gotta take these measures when it's clear that things are not working out. In terms of the coaching, it only saw one departure, that being their strategic coach, Garincha. He's been there since late 2019, meaning that he did at least play a little bit of a role in that playoff push they had. Besides that though, not a lot of promising results as a member of that staff. With every loss is going to come some sort of gain though, and the NYXL made plenty of those, the most notable of which would of course be the re-signing of Jonek. It was a pleasant surprise to see one of their OG players stick around. It sends a message that they want to build this team more around him moving forward. Jonek might have fallen down a bit in the rankings, but he's still a very good flex support player with some of the best mechanics in the league. Pairing up with Jonek in the backline is Friday. Out of all their new recruits, this is the one I'm the least confident in. It's not that Friday can't become a reliable player, it's more that he wasn't really anything special on OZ Gaming from what I've been told from multiple people. I would have loved if the NYXL managed to sign somebody a bit more established, like Toby, let's say. But oh well, if Friday made the team, he had to have done something right. Main supports are hard to come by, so the fact that they chose him over other options makes me think he must complement Jonek in some way. They need somebody who's a bit more on his wavelength when it comes to aggression. They need someone a bit more compatible. Definitely somebody to monitor closely moving forward. Next, we'll talk about the tank line. Along with Bianca getting re-signed, the NYXL decided to give former Toronto Defiant main tank Yakpung a shot. Very intriguing pair to say the least, because Bianca, we really didn't get to see a lot of him last year. When he played, he wasn't bad though. Nothing amazing, but it was his rookie year and his team did not exactly always put him in the best situation. This is his team now though. He's no longer competing with Hotbuff for playtime. The NYXL clearly have a lot of faith in him. There's going to be even more pressure on him to perform now as he's the only off-tank on the roster currently. With his hero pool and potential as a young player though, I have confidence that he could be a good option this year. Yakpung joining this team is interesting. The move itself I like a lot. I've been waiting for this guy to get another chance at the Overwatch League level. Since his 1-year stint on Toronto, he's been grinding in Korean contenders. As a member of O2 Blast, he showed tremendous improvement, even helping his team bring home a contenders title. He's found a way to consistently play up to his potential now. I would say he's probably the 4th best main tank coming out of contenders this year. My one concern about him is that he has some big shoes to fill though. He is the replacement of Mono after all. Playing anywhere near this level is going to be a challenge. That's the one thing that worries me. I really pray that he doesn't crack under the pressure. He's the only main tank on this team, so he's got to step it up. Every moment is going to count. Finally, the NYXL completely retooled their DPS line. They got their hands on Ivy, Guangbong, Feather, and Flora. Ivy is of course the most notable move here. Fantastic all-around signing. As a star player on the Philly Fusion last year, he proved to be a great player across various metas. His versatility is something that the NYXL should be able to get tons of value out of. We saw what he could play last year, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if there's still some cards up his sleeve that we have yet to see. Ivy will undoubtedly be leading the charge for this young rotation. As the established veteran, he's going to be the person to have to come up with a lot of the big plays, I feel like. It's going to be on him. Next, we have who I'm probably the most excited to see besides Ivy, and that is the Korean hitscan prospect out of Chinese contenders, Guangbong. He's someone who does not come from a well-known team, so he's not as popular as he should be. He's one of the most promising rookie prospects at his position. He has the skills to be a true carry. He's unbelievably strong on sniper characters. Him and his team made a late surge in the most recent season of Chinese contenders. It was then that people really started to take notice of him and give him the respect he deserved. So imagine what he could do with better resources to help him progress now. It's a scary thought. Keep his name in mind, New York fans, because he could be a star in the making. Next, we have the flex DPS player Feather, who formerly played on Talon Esports. He's another prospect that a lot of people, including myself, are very excited about. There's probably times where we might not see him all that much, simply because he's sharing the spotlight with Ivy, who plays similar characters, but don't be fooled. He's a very capable player in his own right. From Mei and Genji to Sombra and Pharah, he showcased skill on many different heroes, most notably of course would have to be his Echo. With Echo still being a rather strong character, I would not be surprised if he's a starter at the beginning of the season. Wrapping up the NYXL player acquisitions will be Flora. His role on this team is a bit more mysterious, I feel. Guangbong is absolutely the better sniper and pure hitscan player, so you'd have to imagine Flora has a limited role. If there's one time where I could definitely see him in the game for sure though, it would probably be if Sombra becomes more relevant, because people have been telling me lately that he could be a top tier Sombra player right from day one. As a member of Meta Athena and Team Diamond, Flora did not get many opportunities to showcase his skill in big games. Here's his chance to finally prove his worth. Flora's going to be the person who rounds out this DPS line. Hopefully, we can see him play at least a little bit this year. Wrapping up the NYXL's offseason, they made some coaching adjustments. They promoted former assistant coach Why Not to head coach, they signed Squix as a new assistant, and IMT was demoted down to the head of data. I'm pretty pleased with these decisions because their coaching was a nightmare last year. IMT losing his head coaching status was something that needed to happen. I can only hope that Why Not is the answer they've been looking for. Hopefully he learns a lot of serious lessons from what happened in Season 3 and he can grow as a result and make a better team. So that wraps up the NYXL's offseason. The long-time players that they had built a nice culture around are going to make fans sad, surely, but it's the right thing to do in the grand scheme of things, I feel. They had that same roster for 3 years and they always came up short every single time. What's the point of probably going through that same thing again? It was time for a rebuild. They restructured this team very well in my opinion, and that is why my offseason grade for the NYXL is an A-. Their team could do even better than last year's version. I truly do believe they have that level of potential. They made a lot of the right choices with their personnel and coaching. There's not much more I wanted out of them. They've got some fresh and exciting faces in there, plus some good veterans. There's a handful of players with high ceilings and some serious star power. But sadly, there is no guarantee they do better this year, hence why I did not want to give them a higher grade. It's important to note that most of their additions are ones that they're kind of just hoping will pan out. There are a bunch of young players on that team, so there definitely is a risk factor involved here because there's no guarantee that they're going to post results unlike some of those past teams who showed that consistency factor. In terms of my expectations, I believe this NYXL team could be scrappy and competitive. They're not quite title contenders, but they could give most of the APAC teams trouble, I feel like. And that is why I believe the NYXL could finish anywhere from 13th through 9th place in the overall standings. It's a new era in New York. Their players are young, hungry, and motivated to prove themselves, and I really do believe they'll play with a fiery passion. Trust me, I really am rooting for this team, but that does not necessarily mean they're going to win a lot of games this year. I'd like to believe they can, but the APAC region is going to be tough. While it's true they're capable of probably beating most of their competition on any given day, the opposite is also going to hold true. They don't have a lot of established pieces, so there could be some potential inconsistency issues. Friday in particular could be a weak point, because he just doesn't feel like as strong a pickup as their other positions in my opinion. He needs to find a way to hold his own. If he can play off of Jonek well and he does not feed his brains out, then things will hopefully be okay. In general, a lot of these young players have big shoes to fill. There is going to be pressure that they have to overcome. I just hope that somebody can lead and guide them past these nerves. With no Sabiobi around, somebody else is going to have to step up. Can Jonek, Ivy, or maybe like Yakpun, let's say, be that guy? I hope so. But overall, the NYXL have a lot of upside. If things click for them, I see no reason why they couldn't finish top 10 in the standings. The potential is definitely there. I can feel it. This new roster needs to show us resilience, though. It's something that the old NYXL were lacking. If they can break through those potential barriers, it could be a very fun year. Don't sleep on the NYXL, ladies and gentlemen, or they might just surprise you. And there you go. That wraps up the NYXL offseason recap and my personal evaluation on them heading into Season 4. What are your thoughts on the NYXL after undergoing all these changes? Let me know down in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, it would mean so much if you could give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the series. Friendly reminder that a link can be found in the description for that playlist. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate your support. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.